What's up, YouTube? Titans Tim here. Saturday, the 21st of December. The Texans defeated the Buccaneers 23-20 and took complete control at the division and are now the division champions, the AFC South champions. And a lot of folks and a lot of Titans fans obviously are disappointed. Am I disappointed? Yes. But this video is going to describe why I'm not as disappointed as a lot of folks are. And I will have reasoning behind that. There are a few factors that we have to consider here. With the Texans winning, it might actually help us, the Tennessee Titans, in the long run here in the next 2 weeks. Okay? Let's start here. What would have happened? If the Texans would have lost to the Buccaneers, okay, the Titans would have to defeat the New Orleans Saints and defeat the Houston Texans in Houston to take the division, okay? They would have had to win both games in order to win the division. So they couldn't do one or the other. Let's look at how hard that is. And again, I'm a huge Titans fan, but I'm also trying to be realistic, especially with a Derrick Henry that is not 100% by any means. We saw that last week against Houston. He did not run as hard. He did not finish the runs like we're accustomed to. He didn't have that burst and lasting speed that we were all accustomed to seeing. Great player, even with the injury, right? Of course you want to have him. But he wasn't the same Derrick Henry that we saw all season long. And so if Houston would have lost this game, that would have forced the Titans' hand to say, okay, now we have to win against New Orleans. And we have to win against Houston. And that is a very difficult task. With Houston clinching the division right now in Week 16, this opens up the door and the possibility for the Titans. Yes, they're not going to win the division. Yes, they are not going to host a playoff game. But at the same time, I think the odds of making the playoffs, of getting in, have actually, one could argue, increased. Because now we're focused on the Steelers and not the Texans anymore. Now the Texans, since they clinched the division, can coast. Next week, Week 17, there's a very good chance that the Houston Texans will not start their starters on Week 17 against the Titans to avoid a potential injury. Of course, it's a divisional game. The Texans don't want to see the Titans in the playoffs. But at the same time, the Texans would be taking a large risk by putting out their starters when, in essence, they probably will have nothing to play for. If New England wins against Buffalo tomorrow, the Texans, at the very most, could have a 3 seed. They will not have a bye week. So, in essence, the Texans really do not have much to play for anymore. They got the division. They got home field in the first game of the playoffs. Wild card weekend. There's a realistic chance that they rest their starters, or at least don't open up the playbook like they would have in a do-or-die Week 17 scenario against Tennessee. Okay, so first of all, I think the odds of the Titans winning Week 17 have gone up pretty substantially because Houston either won't expand their playbook, won't show too much because they know potentially they could see the Titans the week after, or bench their players, their starters, because they have nothing else to play for at that point, and they don't want to get their starters injured. So I think Week 17's matchup, the probability of the Titans winning, has actually gone up, believe it or not, because the Texans already clinched against Tampa tonight. Okay? Also, we now have a decision with Derrick Henry. If I'm the Tennessee Titans, I'm absolutely not playing Derrick Henry in this game against the Saints. If the Texans would have lost, that would have forced the Titans' hand to play Derrick Henry with a roughed-up hamstring. And potentially, he would not be nearly as effective for Week 17 with Houston. Now, because this New Orleans game means so much less because Houston clinched the division, it gives the Tennessee Titans a chance to rest Adoree Jackson, to rest Derrick Henry, and go all out on that Week 17 game. If Houston had lost to Tampa, Tennessee would say, we have to win this game right now. Of course you want to win the game against New Orleans. And of course there's a situation where the New Orleans game does matter. If they did beat New Orleans, it does matter if they went 8-8 and lost out, the Steelers lost out, and the Colts won one out of the next two, which is so unlikely. So the probability of the Titans and Saints game being relevant is very slim, because there would have to be losses by the Steelers, losses on the Titans' part, and of course the Colts winning one. That's very unlikely to happen. So again, the Saints game, very, very likely this week and tomorrow is going to be meaningless. Okay? So very likely a meaningless game. Why put Derrick Henry out there? Why not save Derrick Henry for the game that really matters, which is the AFC matchup, which would give us the advantage over the tiebreakers if Pittsburgh loses one game out of the next two to the Jets or loses to the Ravens. If I'm the Tennessee Titans, no way am I putting Derrick Henry out there. He went from healthy to practicing this week, back to questionable. We all saw Derrick Henry. We all saw he was not as effective. He wasn't a downhill runner. He didn't have that great speed, the breakaway speed that we have seen all season. Okay? He was not the same guy. And very well, if he was the same guy, we may have defeated the Texans for sure. Or that fluky play with Ferkser. If that didn't happen, very, very likely we would have beaten the Texans. Okay? But we didn't. And now we have to improvise. And now this Houston Texans clinching the division thing, a lot of Titans fans are like, this is horrible. This is Armageddon. How could we? This is it. Season's over. In reality, if the Texans had lost that game, Titans could have gone out, all out, played Henry, played Adoree Jackson, gotten more banged up, defeated the Steelers, hypothetically, in a perfect world, and then went to Houston in the do-or-die game and lost because Houston had everything to play for in that Week 17. So to go to Houston, if Houston didn't defeat Tampa and the Titans defeated New Orleans, Houston would have everything to play for. The crowd would be electric. Not to say it's not going to be anyway, right? But right now the pressure is off Houston. And we know what happens when Houston relaxes. When they defeated New England convincingly, they relaxed. They overlooked Denver and they got blown out. We see this team. It has a lot of talent, but they just don't put it all together. Or maybe they just don't focus. Or maybe it's a coaching issue with O'Brien. I don't know. But what I am saying is the probability for the Titans of beating Houston that Week 17 has, in my opinion, gone way up. Not to say they will, but it's gone way up. The probability of it happening has gone way up, whether it be bench players or whether it be not showing more than they should be showing because they know potentially they'd play him a week later. So I think the probability of Week 17 of the Titans' victory has gone up. And let's be honest, that's the key critical game, not the New Orleans game. The Texans game has always been, this Week 17 game has always been, for tiebreakers and whatnot, a critical game. And if Houston had lost to Tampa, and if Tennessee defeated New Orleans, and Tennessee went on Week 17 and lost to Houston, they're out of the playoffs. If the Steelers won one game, they're out of the playoffs. The Titans would have been out of the playoffs. But at least now, even though they're not going to host the playoff game, even though they're not going to win the division, I think the probability of making the playoffs actually may have gone up, which is actually crazy to think about. Because now we have more of an opportunity to win on Week 17 on the biggest game for a tiebreaker situation. And we have the opportunity now, because we know that the Houston Texans clinch the division, we have an opportunity to rest Henry, to rest Adoree Jackson, and go all out on that Week 17 and beyond, hopefully. Hoping the Steelers lose a game. What do you guys think? I think this could be a blessing in disguise. I think a lot of folks think this is the end. Of course, in an ideal world, Houston loses to Tampa, Tennessee wins out, they beat New Orleans and beat Houston, knocks Houston out of the playoffs in Titans home they host a playoff game. But that's not the realistic fact now. And it wasn't that probable to begin with. And we have a banged up Henry. okay? But now at least we can give Henry another week to recover. I just don't see him playing Henry, and I don't think they should. I think we not concede, but we try to win without Henry this week against New Orleans, which is a tough task, and if we don't, we don't. And then we know going into Week 17, we win that game, and if Pittsburgh loses either to the Jets this week or the Ravens next week, we are in. When if the Houston Texans would have lost to Tampa, they could essentially have knocked us out on Week 17. So maybe now we have a higher chance at least of getting in. And let's be honest, I'd much rather get in the playoffs than risk it all and try and host a playoff game and win the division. I'd much rather get in. I know it's hard to play on the road, but I'd much rather get in and have a shot rather than risking a very tough Texans team at home, Week 17, everything to play for with a banged-up Derrick Henry. All right, until next time, Titans Tim, signing out. What do you think? Thank you.